Trump has opened a rift with GOP legislators over his language about the Kurds.
Yes.
You're a Republican. Is he wrong?
I think that on this issue, there's a lot in the way of emotion. There's not a lot in the way of knowledge. I think President Trump probably made the same decision President Obama would have made in his decision, because this controversial move from the troops in northern Syria was not exactly a betrayal of the Kurds so much as it was a betrayal of the YPG, which is a group of Kurds that we allied with to fight ISIS. When President Obama went in 2014, he actually tried to ally with Turkey as well. Turkey turned that down, so we allied with the YPG. The YPG is associated with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which the United States officially considers a terrorist organization. This is all very complicated. Now that we've defeated ISIS, what the decision was is, do we maintain an alliance with the YPG that is associated with a group we deem a terrorist organization, or do we ally with our 67-year NATO ally in Turkey? I think in the long run, President Trump probably made the safer decision, but it's going to cause a lot of consternation, and it's going to continue a sad American tradition that goes back to the 70s, which is abandoning our Kurdish allies.
You support the president's withdrawal
from
Syria?
I think in the long term, this could ironically end up benefiting the Kurds, actually specifically because of David's point. It is true that Charles de Gaulle said nations don't have permanent friendships, they have interests. And in this case, what we're doing, far from sending a message to our allies that we're going to abandon them, we're saying we will privilege nation-state allies like our NATO allies over sub-state actors, albeit sub-state actors that have helped us. In the long run, though, what will benefit the Kurds more? A temporary alliance that is constantly fleeting over the last 50 years with the United States, or a withdrawal, perhaps an end to the Syrian civil war? And it looks as though Bashar Assad is pretty safely ensconced now in Syria. It looks as though the Kurds are trying to create an alliance with him. In the long run, what gives them a better shot for long-term sovereignty and independence in their region? Most likely that, rather than a constant state of civil war. The initial reason that Barack Obama allied with the YPG, which is this group of Kurds, despite their association with another group of Kurds that we consider a terrorist organization, is specifically because Turkey, which is the second largest military in NATO, would not go in. The reason that they would not back us is because the official policy of the United States was not for regime change in Damascus. And so if we're already not pushing for regime change in Damascus, then what is the goal of our intervention in Syria? It was to defeat ISIS. We did that. If we are not going to oust Bashar Assad, then it would seem to make perfect sense for the Kurds, whose country this is, to ally with what seems to be the safely ensconced leader, Bashar Assad. There is no good answer here. You're pitting two U.S. allies against one another. One of those allies is a sub-state actor. The other ally is a 67-year NATO ally. It's an impossible situation, and it's unfortunately...
Is it Trump's fault?
No, this was a situation that doesn't even only go back to the Obama administration. I think a lot of Republicans and conservatives point fingers at Barack Obama's withdrawal from Iraq for leading to the rise of ISIS. The problem goes back further than that, though, because then the left will point fingers at the Bush administration for going in and invading Iraq. And our interest in the region has gone back, well, many decades before that. Henry Kissinger himself in the 1970s was using the Kurds as a bargaining chip against Saddam Hussein for the Shah of Iran. We did it again after the Gulf War. This is a situation that continues to repeat itself, and any way that we can possibly get the Kurds into a safer, long-term position for sovereignty is a course that we should follow.
Yeah. Michael, what's Russia's play in all of this?
Well,
or are they enjoying it?
Russia has had an interest in Syria, of course, and actually the role of Russia is perhaps the most interesting here, because as David says, what we're debating is the role of alliances in this world. The NATO alliance made a whole lot of sense during the Cold War. After the Cold War, after the fall of the Soviet Union, it made a little bit less sense. And so now, ironically, you have the same people criticizing Trump for not choosing to back a sub-state actor over a NATO ally, as are the same people who are criticizing Trump for undermining NATO. And I think there are good arguments for all of that. But the question is, what is America's role in the world now that we are the superpower? Are we going to have a sort of benevolent empire where we're everywhere all the time? Or are we going to be a nation state? That's what the argument for nationalism is. And the role of Russia here is key because of rising China. I think if you asked a lot of Americans who's our greater adversary, some group in Syria, Bashar Assad, or China, probably they would say China. And in the relations between the United States, China, and the Soviet Union for a century now, we have always played one off of the other. So for the Cold War, we were often playing China off of Russia. Now that the Cold War is over and you're looking at an adversary in China, there is, in many ways, a strategic interest of the United States to get on better terms with Russia. The Obama administration recognized this. That's why you had Hillary Clinton's Russian reset and Obama saying that he would have more flexibility after his election. And I think in some ways that's why you see President Trump trying to push for better relations with Moscow, although he's being accused of colluding as a result of that.